for another confidence convo. This is episode 10, where we discuss all things confidence, and we will be live streaming and recording bi-weekly on Wednesdays on Facebook, YouTube, and your favorite podcast streaming platform. This week, we will be diving into why we feel like we should have it all together all of the time. And before we get started, I'd love to introduce myself. I am Davina Maria, and I am a master coach and founder of the Restore Yourself Method and host of Worthy Women Facebook group. And I help female go-getters in their 30s develop unshakable confidence so they can powerfully step into their limitless potential. Over to you, Joanna.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Davina. My name is Joanna Tonkin. I'm a registered psychotherapist, confidence coach, and I'm the founder of the Confidence Formula. I also host the Facebook community, Confidence for Young Adults. I work with young adults who are high achievers, wanting to feel more confident so that they can be successful. Davina and I got together to create this for you because we are obsessed with all things personal development, and we strongly believe in the power of learning and growing together.
And just to clarify, we are not perfect at being confident all of the time. Like you, we move through our struggles and overcome obstacles and mindsets to continuously improve. So just think of us as guides by your side. I absolutely love today's topic, and I think we can go so many places with it. But I know that we spoke about this in the week, and there is a perception that a lot of people have that everyone else has it all together. And when some of the people that we know think in that way, they feel really bad about themselves. And maybe there's a little bit of guilt, maybe to a degree, some shame, and comparison. If you perceive that someone else has everything together and you know that you don't, you almost feel like, oh, if I compare myself to them, I'm, maybe not doing as well as I could be. Or sometimes if it's someone that's on the same age as you, probably feel like I should be further along than I am at my age. And all of these things sort of come into it. So I also feel like sometimes there's a bit of perfectionism there, like we're always striving for perfection, which, I don't know if it actually exists. But anyway, what does it mean to you to have it all together?
Yeah. So I think you just said it right there, right? It's this idea of perfection and striving for perfection. And so I think about this having it all together as all or nothing, right? Either I'm going to have everything all together. So my social life, my professional life, my personal life, my relation, all of my life in entirety is going to all be together. And if it's not together, then I'm not reaching the quota, or I'm comparing myself to other people, like you said, and I'm not, as good as they are. And so, the word all really sticks out to me. Can we actually have it all together? Right? And my gut, I have a part of me saying like, that's ridiculous. And I have another part of me that says like, oh yeah, that's possible. I can do it. That's what I'm actually working towards, is having my whole life together. And it's like these two parts are constantly in conflict, at least inside of me.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. There's a little girl inside me that feels like she can just conquer the world. Mm-hmm. So, when it comes to having it all together, she's like, yeah, of course, like, why else are we alive? Like, what are we doing if we're not striving towards this, goal of perfection and just having everything together? But yeah, I don't think it's possible. I feel like, if it was possible, someone would have done it.
I love that.
Yeah, genuinely, there would be someone in the news, I don't know, Guinness World Book of Records, something, first person to have it all together. And the fact that they isn't that person, I don't think it's like a challenge in the sense of, oh, just because there's not that person, I could be that person. I think it's genuinely something that we strive for that maybe it just doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. When you said that, the idea of like a finite end goal versus like a static experience of life kind of came to mind, right? Like, are we moving towards life towards this like finish line, or can we sometimes touch our toe to the finish line, but then like, things will happen and not everything will be together again. So it's like more like of a static flow system than an absolutes.
And I wonder whether it's also, I know we spoke a little bit about perception earlier. I wonder whether it's also this sort of like a perception that we have to be focused on an outcome rather than enjoying the journey. Yeah, and like sort of like taking in every step of the journey, whether it's good, whether it's not good, kind of like being in whatever circumstance we're in, regardless of the outcome that we might want, because ultimately we can't control that, can we?
Yeah, which brings me to the next point that we wanted to talk about was like, why do we want to have it all together? Like, what do we think having it all together is going to feel like at the end? So maybe you can answer that question. Like, what do you feel like you could achieve or could get to by getting to that, like, quote unquote goal or finish line?
So I think for me, when I kind of think about it, having it all together makes me feel like if I had it all together, I would have a certain level of control, control over my life, or control over my circumstances, or control over just everything. Um, and I also feel like there's two other feelings that come to mind. One of them is peace. I feel like, do you know what? If you have it all together and it's all just this great, well-oiled machine, everything's just running like clockwork, things are just working out, everything's amazing. Um, I think you'd feel an element of being really peaceful. But then there's another part of me that also thinks I would be bored out of my brain.
Can you say more about that last one?
Imagine if, let's paint the picture. Imagine if you have nothing to complain about, nothing that's bothering you, nothing that's concerning, nothing that's remotely, if we have like a baseline of just, let's just call it normality for the sake of the word, your baseline of normality, and there's nothing that goes above or below that baseline. It's just this one static sameness every day, and there's no uncertainty, there's no variety, there's no diversity. It's just the same because everything is just together.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'd be bored.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I thrive on chaos, but I feel like there would be no challenge as well. There'd be no growth. What are you striving towards if everything is all together?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really impactful what you said there. And I think that what comes up for me is this like an experience that I had where I was fortunate enough to spend a couple months after
Yeah.
graduation traveling. And I really didn't have anything to be accountable to. I didn't have any responsibilities. I was just kind of moving and going with my flow, and it was great. And I
Yeah.
noticed like towards the end, I was kind of getting bored. And like I know people working, and I know myself now is like, how could you be bored in that situation? Wouldn't a couple of months, traveling be wonderful? And I
Yeah.
really felt like I didn't have goals. I wasn't working towards anything. And kind of in that flow state was great. I was really connected to myself, but I didn't feel fulfilled. And so when you said that, I really like thought about that time, and I agree. I think that if you didn't have ups and downs,
Yeah.
you get bored.
So if we agree that it might be a bit boring, albeit peaceful, and maybe we can also agree that if everything was all together for a time, it might be quite nice. Maybe it's sort of like it's not sort of like it's like a limited edition sort of a situation. If we can agree on that, how do you think we can be okay with not having it all together?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I want to point to the elephant in the room that, society and culturally we are conditioned to at least appear that we have it all together, if not try
Yeah,
to, actually have our life put together. And I think specifically as women, and I holler to all the men out
yeah,
there, your jobs
100%.
are so important too. But I think the pressures for the woman, historically speaking, to manage the household,
Hmm.
to take care of the children, to do all the women's role things that we have to do, and then add
Yeah,
on to that, now we're all in the working force as well, or some of us are in the working force now as well. It's like there's so many responsibilities for women, and like trying to keep all those aspects of life like together is really
yeah,
challenging. And I think we're kind of expected to a degree, and I know that you and I are part of the same like coaching program, and a lot of the programs are actually based on like burnt out moms. Like, why
yeah,
are women becoming so burnt out? Is because of this pressure, this like feeling of obligation to like have it all together. And so I think that that's, why we're in the place that we're in. And I'm sorry, I forget your question.
So how can we be okay with
Okay.
not having it all together?
Yeah. So I think what comes up for me is this idea that why we want to have it all together. So if a mom or a dad or anyone, adult, whatever, gets it all together, what are they striving for? And for me, what comes up is like rest or peace, like you said.
Yeah.
I want it all together so that I can take a break. And so what comes up for me,
Yeah.
do the peace. Why can't we do the break in our life instead of trying to get this like end goal result that's like really hard to get to if at all possible, and then the break? Then can't we just enjoy moments of peace and rest in and of the whole experience, in and of the journey, like you were talking about?
Oh, I absolutely love that. I love that because I feel like that is exactly what life is about. And I think, you mentioned ups and downs earlier. Surely, rest comes into the kind of agenda of life. There should be times for resting, there should be times for not resting. There's times for ups, there's time for downs, so I feel like everything has its time and its place. And finding a way to make sure that you can fit all of that in your life now, regardless of what is going on and how much you have it all together. I mean, I don't even know how you can measure that. How do you measure how much togetherness you have in your life? Like, wait, who said it? Like, yeah, anyway, I feel like, yeah, regardless of whether you feel like you don't have it all together, taking a break, resting, and finding ways to have peace in your life now is, I think that's an amazing takeaway from today. I know we spoke about self-care last week, and I think this kind of fits into that because you've also mentioned like burnt out moms. If we are in a situation where we feel the pressure to have it all together, we're burning out, trying to reach this unattainable standard. It almost feels like, yeah, we just have to take a step back. So regardless of the pressure, you have to find a way to kind of take a step back and think, okay, what do I need in this moment? I need to rest. And that's the self-care that you give yourself.
Mm-hmm. So two things come up as you're sharing that. This necessity to identify and define what all together means for each individual, and to not be looking at other people, what they have, figured out, because you really don't know what's going on in someone's life. Just because they appear to have like their laundry done and their house taken care of and the children look like they're,
Yeah.
Good kids, you don't know what's happening in their professional life and their marriage and their, relationships. Like, you don't know. Right. So we kind of need to just define for ourselves what it means to have it all together. Like, what are we actually tangibly measuring, like you said?
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And then also this feeling of like guilt-free rest, like
Yes.
scheduling time in to do the self-care, to take the breaks, to feel at peace, but also making sure that guilt doesn't seep into that. I know I see this with my clients all the time. It's like, I took Sunday off, but I felt so guilty. I could have been, gardening, or I feel so guilty I could have been playing with the kids, or I feel so guilty, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, you're not really resting, you're not really taking care of yourself if you're
Yeah.
feeling guilty that you're not doing something else. And so really scheduling in time to be like, I'm not going to feel guilty. Before I do this thing, if I want to, I can, get the things that I have to do done, and then
Yeah.
reward yourself with some guilt-free rest time. And I think that's going to charge your batteries, like we were talking about last time, in order to keep moving through life.
100%. And I read something today about guilty pleasures. And, some people love chocolate and, I love coffee. And it was interesting because I was thinking, why do we call it a guilty pleasure? Why don't we just say, like, I love that. That makes me feel good. And then leave it at that. And I think that's what I was sort of came to my mind when you were saying about, just forget the guilt. Because if rest is going to make you feel better, then that's all you need. You don't need to feel bad about making yourself feel better. And it's almost like it's like a counterproductive thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to feel bad because I need to feel good. Like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah,
The
I think we all do it, don't we? The whole, I took time off, but I felt bad because I didn't do X, Y, and Z.
It's the guilty pleasure is almost like a symbolic way of like talking about how our society looks at pleasure. We can't just have pleasure to have pleasure. We need to feel
Yeah.
guilty about it, right? And that just says a lot about the kind of world that we live in.
Yeah, yeah, let's feel bad about it, but it feels so good and I like it, but let's feel bad. Yeah, I know. It is a bit ridiculous, isn't it?
Hmm.
Um, I know you mentioned the word conditioning earlier, and I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was wondering who's going to mention conditioning first, um, because in my mind I was thinking a lot of what we're talking about now very much comes from conditioning. And I think sometimes, if you grow up with a mom, for example, who is always on the go, how do you learn as a woman that that is not necessarily the right way to be? Where do you learn that actually sometimes I need to just chill, take some time out, and relax? And I think a lot of what we learn from, family upbringing can massively sort of affect the beliefs that we have around rest and around self care and around having it all together. Because sometimes, we have the conditioning that you're not living a life if you don't have it all together, or you're not living a life if you don't give out the perception that you have it all together. So, yeah, very, very interesting. So, in terms of, I know we've spoken about the fact that we can't really measure it, or maybe everyone's measurement is different of what it means to have it all together. If we were thinking about any tips that we can leave with our audience today about ways that they can kind of cope with the pressure, how would you, or what's one thing that you would say would be helpful?
One thing that we haven't mentioned so far.
Yeah.
That's hard. Okay. Um, Measure your progress, not the non-existent potential.
Yeah.
Right? So if your goal is to have it all together, whatever that means for you, but you're still a
Mm.
little bit short of that, which is okay, which is normal, is what we're saying, you know, don't see the lack from where you are to where you want to be. Instead,
Yeah.
see the progress that you've made in where you used to be, maybe a year ago, 3 months ago, 6 weeks ago, to where you are
Mm.
now, right?
100%.
Measure the progress, not the lack, is what I would say.
Yeah. And I also feel like that's really helpful as well with comparison,
Hmm.
because if you're measuring your own progress and your own kind of milestones of where you were last year, where you are now, and where you want to be in a year's time, you're measuring yourself rather than looking at someone else and thinking, oh, what have they done that I haven't done?
Hmm.
So yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Also,
think,
stay in your. I'm gonna add something else. Stay in your
yeah,
lane, like you're saying. Like, stop looking at other people, what they're doing in their lives, because you don't know what's happening. But stay
yeah,
in your lane. Just focus on yourself and your own growth and development. Sorry, I wanted to put
100%,
that in there.
100%. I think what I would say is slightly similar. I was thinking of gratitude, which I think is very
Mm,
similar to what you said, in terms of just being thankful for where you are and what you have in the present moment. I know we spoke about ups and downs earlier, and I think even if you're on a high, you don't know when the low is going to come, or even if you're on a low, you don't know when the high is going to come. And I think sometimes just being mindful, and again, we spoke about sort of enjoying the journey, but being mindful about what's happening now, today, what the reality is right now. It also helps with measuring your progress and your sort of your milestones and where you are and where you were last year. But it also, I think it just grounds you in the moment. You're not comparing yourself to anyone. You're not rushing to, do this, that, or the other. You're kind of like just in the moment, being grateful for everything that you have and just mindfully kind of, enjoying the experience of life and doing that. So yeah, I think we've kind of got very similar things there. I like that. I like that a lot. Um,
can you give our audience one gratitude practice that you enjoy?
ooh, do you know what I love doing? My
What do you
my
love doing?
gratitude practice is so simple. I try not to overcomplicate it because otherwise you just get yourself into like a muddle. But I just every day I think of 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I don't necessarily write them down all the time because sometimes, life just gets manic. So sometimes I'll be driving in my car and I'll just talk to myself and I'll just list my five things. So I'll be driving along and I'll think, I'm so grateful that I have a car. Especially on a rainy day, you're like, I'm so grateful for my car right now. Um, And it doesn't have to be huge things either. Sometimes I'm like, do you know what? If I didn't have glasses, might not be able to see that well. Grateful for my glasses. It could be something so small that maybe you don't even think about every day. You take it for granted. Breathing, seeing, being able to touch things. Your five senses are so critical. But yeah, every single day I try and just list 5 things I'm grateful for on that day, and it honestly lifts my mood. I just feel like so much lighter afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome. I feel like we've come to the end of this episode, and as always, it's been so great chatting with you, Joanna, and I know that we could probably go on a bit longer on this topic. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. And for more information on who we are, what we do, and our love of all things confidence and self-development, you can find or follow us from our social media information posted below in the comments. And if you've liked what you've heard, feel free to like, share, or subscribe. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
See you soon. Bye.